Hello and welcome to Michael's Minty Music for today. Today we review the Power Station's second and final album, 1996's Living in Fear. It's alright. This is the track listing, and these are the tracks that added to my playlist, 6 out of 11, so technically 1 over half here. This album is alright, but it doesn't really have anything outstanding on it. It's mostly originals. There are 2 covers here, and they're okay. The one I'm more familiar with is the original Taxman by the Beatles. And this version is an interesting interpretation, but it's definitely not better than the original. The flow to the album is fine. There aren't really good enough songs for it to really flow well, but the opening couple of tracks are decent, and the 3-song run from the title track, track 7, to the 9th track, Dope, is pretty good. The middle of the album's pretty boring, though, and they don't really ever manage to live up to sort of the expectation of the first couple of tracks. Still, pretty much none of these songs are egregiously bad. They're just sort of traditional rock tracks with pop stuff going on in the background. Nothing groundbreaking here, but definitely not too bad when compared to sort of what was popular in the late 90s. This album could be a lot better, but also could be a little worse. It's pretty high speed overall, so that ends up working in its favor, and the rock tracks are definitely not bad. It's more the pop stuff that ends up being pretty boring in my opinion. So overall, an alright album, but definitely nothing to write home about. There's one single released before the album, She Can Rock It, which is definitely one of the better tracks here, although my favorite one was the title track, Living in Fear. It's just as good as She Can Rock It, and it begins sort of a 3-song run of all pretty good tracks, and these 3 songs do a lot to make the album listenable. I ranked this album second, so last out of the 2 Power Station albums. I think the first one is definitely better. Living in Fear isn't bad, but the first one is really good, just a step above when it comes to album construction, general quality, and uniqueness in sound. They were clearly hitting on something a lot more interesting on their first album than this one. What is this? 11 years later. When it comes to ranking this album on the Duran Duran ranking, since I did that for the first one as well, it probably goes somewhere here, above All You Need Is Now, but probably below Paper Gods. It's basically the same level of quality as Paper Gods and the Wedding album. Some good stuff, but mostly just fine. Nothing really egregious, but no outstanding tracks to bump it up on the rankings. Additionally, this album doesn't take my top spot from 1996 that stays with Sting's Mercury Falling, which is definitely a higher quality album from the year, more consistent, better put together, and it even kind of has a bit more variety than Living in Fear, which is not something I expected because Sting usually struggles with that. So. But yeah, definitely keeps it there. Thank you for watching. Next up, I will review the Beatles' 1966 album, Revolver. This is one of their best albums and probably one of the greatest albums of all time, so I'm not exactly sure what I'll say on this review, but stay tuned for that, and as always, stay minty.